Hey everyone, I'm back with another video. Outside again. Today we're gonna look at the human impact in nature and why it's so terrible. Whatever. It's so hot out here. This is no mosquitoes and everything. Like whatever, bro. I got it. Anyways. We as the human species are constantly evolving and rapidly multiplying into more people as time is passing, which makes the amount of environmental impact much bigger, and the demand for a higher quality of life also become much bigger and diverse. We depend on the resources from living ecosystems to create and maintain all of our devices, industries, and sectors of production. So when these systems face problems like climate change, famine, or mass ecological destruction, all life inside of these are at a risk of pollution, increased natural buffers, and diseases and extinction. Quote, many common human activities damage, alter, or destroy the Earth's ecosystems. Agricultural expansion, extraction of natural resources, and urbanization are the sort of large-scale initiatives that contribute to ecosystem destruction, while individual actions like overhunting and the introduction of invasive species can also contribute to an ecosystem's decline. These activities, to varying degrees, pollute the air and water, degrade and erode the soil, and cause the deaths of animals and plants. They also disrupt the natural environmental processes that allow ecosystems to exist, such as the hydrologic cycle. And as a result, these ecosystems are degraded and in some cases destroyed entirely. Another process of environmental impact which correlates with the damage to the environment and causes ecosystems to change and be at risk is the process of habitat fragmentation. This is when an ecosystem's natural habitat of animals gets hit with an ecological impact of separation, loss, or interruption of a habitat's state, which causes it to fragment its normal wildlife into different ecosystems. Habitat fragmentation can be caused by environmentally induced reasons such as volcanic eruptions, floods, tornadoes, and wildfires, but also can be heavily created because of human inducements such as deforestation, land clearing, and urban construction. Quote, fragmentation happens when parts of a habitat are destroyed, leaving behind smaller unconnected areas. End of quote. New quote. Fragmentation can also lead to what is known as the edge effect. Some species, including certain mosses and lichens, how do you pronounce that? Lichens? Whatever. Like damp, shady conditions. As a patch of forest shrinks, they may get exposed to too much sun or giant wind and disappear. Note that there can be a positive natural edge effect where two habitats meet. This can be great for biodiversity. End of quote. New quote. Explanations for positive fragmentation effects are myriad, including reduced intra and interspecies competition, stabilization of predator and parasite, and prey and host interactions, higher landscape complementation, positive edge effects, and higher landscape connectivity. In order for us to do our everyday activities, we need to extract all sorts of resources, as well as take place in different environments, which are the ones where we cause damage. When we get a bigger vision of the impact of all this resource consumption and what it causes, and put it all together, we can see that it's not at all a state that we want to keep the planet in, and that continuous amount of negative impact can ruin even further the state of the planet. In research for the International Union of Conservation of Nature, quote, researchers explored how human prey choices vary depending on geography and how predatory motivations from areas including the exotic pet trade, hunting, and fishing affect prey animals' species extinction risk. To conduct this study, the team categorized how approximately 47,000 vertebrate species are used. The team then quantified how many of these uses were both human-driven and a serious threat to the survival of species, ultimately determining the degree to which a species was endangered by human predation. According to their analysis, humans target about 15,000 total wild vertebrate species for a diverse range of uses, equivalent to 1/3 of all such species on Earth. This number is a staggering 5 to 300 times the number of species targeted by other similarly wide-ranging predators like sharks, birds of prey, and large carnivores. Troublingly, the researchers discovered that our ecological impact is 300 times larger than that of comparable predators. End of quote. Do I look chopped? Anyways, another thought to analyze is that if we were to see it from the perspective that all human... Why am I sitting like this? Let's go back to the original one. From the perspective that all human impact can technically be labeled as a natural process, we can therefore justify the amount of impact that we're causing to the planet, because really we are just another species doing the same things and surviving in our own way. So really we're just acting out on our instinctual knowledge. But this is by far not true, because humans have much higher levels of consciousness, and we have such further evolution that other species don't have, and that allows us to be aware of things that other species can't, such as science, history, and philosophy, which allow us to further create even wiser societies, on top of simply just having survival instincts tied to our species, which therefore is the difference between humans and other species. The term ecocide is defined to describe an amount of mass negative ecological impact that causes long-term damages to an ecosystem. Quote, the draft definition marks an important step in getting ecocide on the international agenda, and it does a good job of defining and balancing the core elements of ecocide, quote, severe and either, quote, widespread or, quote, long-term damage to, quote, any element of the environment, end of quote. Laudably, these core elements show a concern for ecosystem integrity, human rights to a healthy environment, and the way grave damage to ecosystems can have devastating local and planetary consequences well into the future. This is a significant achievement. Despite these strengths, lawyers and scholars, including ourselves, have identified problems with the definition. Key concern is that under the proposed definition, lawful acts are only ecocidal if they are, quote, wanton, defined as, quote, reckless disregard for damage which would be clearly excessive in relation to the social and economic benefits anticipated, end of quote. This condition assumes some ecocidal damage is acceptable in the name of human progress. According to the panel, such socially beneficial acts might include building housing developments and transport links. This assumption furthers this human-centered privilege and the get-out-of-jail clauses that have so weakened international environmental law to date. We are not saying that housing, transport links, or farms should not be built, but in a period some scientists are calling the sixth mass extinction, they cannot come at the expense of crucial species and ecosystems. Sustainable development must respect this boundary. The assumption also fails to recognize the gravity of ecocide. Such trade-offs, formerly known as derogations, are rejected by the international conventions governing slavery, torture, sexual violence, and fundamental human rights, end of quote. All species take their own place in the food chain by creating their own survival of the fittest. This includes consuming the resources and nutrients that their body needs, which naturally all species, including humans, oftentimes fail to provide themselves with or function properly with, for various different reasons. So if we trace back all the way to the roots of the food chain, we will see that in order to create the cycle of life for all species, the nutrients make up the existence of every biome that gives life to these organisms. And in order for the nutrients to survive as well, there's an obligation for everybody to get back to the soil and make sure that the fauna lives in order for everything else to be in its place. This process is called the nutrient cycle. Quote, Depending on the scale, nutrient cycles are open or closed. The basic concepts of food webs and nutrient cycles can be applied regardless of habitat, but terrestrial and aquatic species experience very different environments, which has affected the evolution and dominance of species and resulted in considerable differences in nutrient cycles. The ultimate source of the vast majority of energy-sustaining food webs is the sun. Marine and terrestrial contributions to total primary production are fairly evenly balanced. When primary producers, such as plants and algae, are eaten while alive, they are said to enter the grazing food chain. Most primary producers die before being consumed and thereby fuel the detritus food chain, which is strongly influenced by microorganisms. Parasites have an essential, though often underappreciated, impact on food chains. End of quote. And behind the nutrient cycle exists the processes of biomagnification and bioaccumulation, which, caused by humans, alters the nature of the nutrient cycle by means of external pollution. Quote, bioaccumulation and biomagnification are two different processes that often occur in tandem with one another. Bioaccumulation is the process by which toxins enter the food web by building up individual organisms, while biomagnification is the process by which toxins are passed from one trophic level to the next, and thereby increase in concentration within a food web. Synthetic man-made chemicals called persistent organic pollutants, or POPs, are of primary concern when looking at bioaccumulation and biomagnification. These chemicals do not easily break down in the environment and can build up the fatty tissues of living organisms. Some examples of POPs you may have heard include DDT, an insecticide that was used extensively post-World War II, and PVCs, flame retardants. Although the production of these chemicals was banned during the 1970s and 1980s, they can still be found in the oceans as well as the tissues of many marine animals because their ability to, number one, persist in the environment for long periods of time, number two, move within water, and number three, dissolve into the fatty tissues of living organisms. For all these reasons, POPs like DDT and PVCs are the main cause for bioaccumulating and biomagnifying. End of quote. The concern for protecting the environment isn't even the bare minimum of making an effort to save it from everything we do to it. Because in order to restore the planet's state of health to a point where it is safe to live in for all our species, and most importantly for humans, to be able to have a higher quality of life where we don't have the same amount of inequality as we do right now. The most effective solution to this is to continue to spread the explicit idea that we are in an emergency state and that the planet cannot keep being treated the way it has been for so long. Because while the Because while the general knowledge of biology and philosophy have given us the level of advanced ethics that have led our society to be as wise and fair as they are, as well as with much stronger justice and more ethical laws. But most importantly, the human laws. The way that we prioritize the surface level goals inside our timeline, such as the rat race, in other words, pursuing success in aspects such as wealth and material possessions and power in many cases too. This sort of global normalization amongst the big majority of humans makes us dismiss the importance of taking responsibility of the planet's well-being. Quote, production itself is contingent on consumption. Without sufficient consumption, which creates more demands for production, the production cycle would be paralyzed. Consumption is thus the flip side of the coin of a thriving production cycle. But while capitalism stimulates tremendous productivity rates, it biases productivity towards more consumption to ensure that the production process is not impeded. Therefore, mass consumption or consumerism is not merely a cultural phenomenon. It is embedded in the core tenets of capitalism as an economic system. The higher consumption, the higher production. The higher production, the higher sales. And with higher sales, higher profits are generated, which are largely reinvested in the sustainability of the firm or the business unit. But if we live in a finite planet with limited ecological and natural resources that ought to be preserved for sustainability purposes, how then can we resolve this contradiction? If the carrying capacity of the world cannot sustain endless consumption and production, there is clearly a contradiction at stake here. This contradiction naturally raises the more important question: how to reconcile the quandary of maintaining a capitalist system that meets necessary growth rates to remain stable on one hand, and simultaneously contain the environmental hazards that threaten our planet on the other. End of quote. So I just got kicked out of there. Like, it was a fucking private lot, I think. I'm going home now. And I'm gonna film on my way there, I guess. Yeah. I hate cops. Alright, bro, so like, I got kicked out of there. Turns out it was a public lot. I mean, a private lot. And, fucking security guards came out of there and kicked me out. Like 3 times, because it wasn't just one. I wasn't allowed to go like in any sort of green spaces. Minimum wage workers telling me to get out, only to be broke as fuck anyways. But let's continue. Okay, so now I'm gonna have to like film like this. I don't know. I'm gonna have to grab it myself because I have nowhere to put it on. Sorry if I'm so fucking chopped. You're gonna have to see. Anyways, let's continue. So, both culturally and lawfully, the pragmatic human. Am I getting too close? I don't care. So, both culturally and lawfully, the pragmatic human desire to produce more and more technological and scientific inventions and advances with the purpose of creating bigger profits and bigger advancement impacts. It is at the cost of both the environmental and equalitarian human needs, when done simply in a way where the ruling class is the one to stand all the benefits to themselves. And the blind danger that this causes is that it becomes a normalized reality where the power that this system holds also controls the influence over their ethics in order to shift the blame away from their actions into the easiest ideas to indoctrinate into the public eye, making it seem as though this is just the way things are meant to be, which in the end, for someone who doesn't receive any further knowledge perceives this reality as a competence for power and drives them into cooperating with the presented reality from the ruling class. It's a lot pretty here though. Like, at least I got shadow now, and I'm also in a pretty bench. I highly doubt I can lay down again because the fucking cops are gonna kill me. They're gonna kick me out. The push to create more advanced technology has been unstoppable as far as many centuries behind. And it only keeps getting more and more advanced in these newer eras, with the inventions like computers, smartphones, internet, Bluetooth, and of course the rise of the one infamous thing right now, AI. Quote, the computational power required to train generative AI models that often have billions of parameters, such as OpenAI's GPT-4, can demand a staggering amount of electricity, which leads to increased carbon dioxide emissions and pressures on the electric grid. The electricity demands of data centers are one major factor contributing to the environmental impacts of generative AI, since data centers are used to train and run the deep learning models behind popular tools like ChatGPT and DALL-E. Scientists have estimated that the power requirements of data centers in North America increased from 2,688 megawatts at the end of 2022 to 5,341 megawatts at the end of 2023, partly driven by the demands of generative AI. Globally, the electricity consumption of data centers rose to 460 terawatt hours in 2022. This would have made data centers the 11th largest electricity consumer in the world, between the nations of Saudi Arabia, 371 terawatt hours, and France, 463 terawatt hours, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. End of quote. And we have since implemented a big amount of advancement into our societies with much simpler work techniques thanks to all this technology. This has only all been allowed to exist inside the pressuring rat race, thus existing within the context of innovation for profit. At the first glance, a rapidly advancing technological business or investment that creates a high demand can sound incredibly promising, especially for those who seem to get into the working areas of these. And for the most part, yeah, these projects in high demand open a lot of gateways to profit for those who control them inside this marketable scheme. Quote, due to the increasing global population, levels of natural resource degradation are also increasing. This has resulted in the estimation of the world's eco-footprint to be 1.5 times the ability of the Earth to sustainably provide each individual with enough resources that meets their consumption levels. Since the Industrial Revolution, large-scale mineral and oil exploration has been increasing, causing more and more natural oil and mineral depletion. Combined with advancements in technology, development, and research, the exploitation of minerals has become easier, and humans are therefore digging deeper to access more, which has led to many resources entering into a production decline. End of quote. The problem with it all is that no matter how big the impacts this is causing, it is still heavily ignored because the only eye-catching thing about mass-produced technology is how accessible and useful it is for us. And so many people will dismiss any possible destructive ecological long-term problems happening because of it. Simply because not everyone is devoted to learn deeply to form the wisest ethical decisions, as many of the information of the roots and lead up to the current system go further from what they do and what they could also care about, unless they are either presented with the education of such or actually care enough and manage to dive deep into it and achieve it alone. A very useful example of this, a very useful example of this could be one such as the one from the book. But a very useful example of this, I'm going insane. A very useful example of this could be one from the book Techno-Capitalism by Loretta Napoleoni. Quote, let's assume for a moment that we are in a house where a father lives with his children. One day he announces that the children can earn bills he produces after doing various household chores. These banknotes have no value, and therefore the children have no interest in working to accumulate what they consider just pieces of paper. But when the father tells them that to eat and to continue living in the house, they have to pay, say, 200 of those bills a month. Those pieces of paper then become valuable, and the children will then start doing housework to earn them. End of quote. There's never too much amount of complaining about the environment, especially when it clearly isn't getting any better. Like guys, it's not corny to advocate for renewable energy and whatever the fuck. And there's an alarming amount of media and people who just don't unify because it is either inconvenient or annoying. And so that maintains like the famous mindset of, well, I'm not gonna do it, somebody else is gonna fix it, and I don't have to deal with it, I don't have to worry about it. And of course, inside the food chain, we are made to survive, inside the planet against is that so loud or not? We are made to survive inside the planet with against other species inside the food chain and natural occurrences, and like you either survive or live broke or like you die. But so when we all join together, I'm probably gonna have the same conclusion as I did like in my last video. I don't care. When we manage the reality, wait, no, fuck. Wait, hold on. I'm gonna read a quote I wrote. No more outer source quotes. I'm gonna pull out my own. I don't think it makes any sense, but it has to do with what I wrote and everything else, so y'all are gonna have to see it. Okay, so when we all join together in our own human society, where we manage the reality of surviving into a lawfully based pursuit of commitment and fulfillment, it is in our privilege to get what we want, or just be able to dream about it and maybe appear inside an environment where we're not conscious enough, making that the cycle of pursuing the desires that we learned by ourselves to be what we really do everything for. And everything outside of that is simply a never-ending failure that we are not going to focus in, but rather just focus on individually the things that we are going to understand. Okay, that's all. That's the whole video. Did I do well? Am I silly as fuck? Or am I just like cringy? Please tell me, guys. I don't know. I think I'm gonna film here, like now, all the time. It's such a pretty garden. Look. Honestly, I think I'm gonna stay here. It pisses me off because there's so many cars in here, but I got kicked out of. I travel all the way to the north of I traveled all the way to the north of the city just to get kicked out of the fucking private lot where I was like filming. But either way, it was like so hot in there, so like who cares? It's a lot better in here though. Like I'm also enjoying staying here a lot too, so I kind of noticed that I think my voice in English is like forcibly deeper, like lower pitched, and it's not even me trying to like fake. Like it's just for some reason I'm speaking English and this is what my voice turns into. So if that can help me like learn how to sing or whatever, I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna be a musician, guys. I'm gonna be a super quirky musician. Y'all better love me. Yeah, that's all. I hope the audio is hearable this time. Like I tried to record with my headphone with my earphones. That so fucking this legs. I tried to record with my earphones last time, and it was just like the audio was so shit. I couldn't do it. But you know, it's fine. I'm gonna keep doing this, so my videos are just fucking terrible anyways. I mean, that's kind of what makes my videos be my videos. So let's keep it that way. Bye. So much fucking mosquitoes in there too. Anyways, bye. Bye.